Okay, our speaker is going to talk about SAP penetration testing. His name is Mariano Nunes Bicroce. So I'll give the floor to him.
Okay, thank you, Ivo. Can everybody hear me in the back? It's all right? Okay. Well, my name is Mariano. Yes, my surname is quite difficult, so forget about it. Good morning, everyone. The idea is I'm here to spend the following hour or so with you talking about SAP penetration testing. First, it would be great for me to know the general knowledge level is how many of you have ever done any SAP assessment or SAP security in general? Hands up. Well, quite a few people. So, yes, actually was guessing that. So the idea of this talk, we're going to be starting on the very basic concepts on SAP, of the SAP world and the SAP systems. And then we're going to go through on how to make an SAP penetration test and how to secure the systems from the possible attacks. We're going from the early discovery phase up to the exploitation phase with many demos and live exploits. Okay. Just a quick introduction. I work for Cypsec. It's an Argentinian-based company that is running for 13 years. We mainly work with customers in Latin America, USA, and we have just now opened about a year ago an office in Spain, in Barcelona. So we are also working with the European market. Cypsec provides a wide range of services. You can just check it on the website. But maybe the specialty is like we provide specific SAP security services. About me, I'm a senior security researcher in Cypsec, and I'm currently the project leader of the SAP security team. I was originally devoted to penetration testing, mostly web pen tests and vulnerability research. So I get quite a bit bored out of it, so I decided to move that kind of knowledge just to the SAP stuff. In that way, I have discovered some vulnerabilities in SAP, about more than 40 so far. And I am the developer of Sapito, which is the first SAP penetration testing framework that we are going to be using a lot today. And I'm also the instructor of the SAP in security training. Maybe you have seen me around these days. I was hosting the training here. Okay. So this is the agenda we have for today. We're going to make a quick introduction to the very basic concepts of SAP systems so that you get base knowledge for the next exercises or the next slides. We're going to talk about why do we need an SAP penetration test and if we need it really. We're going to see how you should set up your systems in order to make an SAP assessment, that you need some particular tools. And then we're going to go through all the phases of the pentest project. Yes, we're going to go through the discovery phase, exploration, vulnerability assessment, and exploitation phase. Okay, let's start with the basic concepts. Probably many of you don't even know what SAP is. Okay, SAP is actually a company. It's a German company, really big one, that is devoted to the development of business solutions. Right. Well, there you can see some numbers of SAP numbers. Probably the most important one is this one, that it says that SAP has more than 120,000 implementations around the globe. So it's probably the more important business software used in the world. Right? It's going to be used in every big company like Fortune 100, 500, 1,000, whatever. So you'll find it in military, government, health, education. I mean, really big companies most of them will be running SAP systems. So SAP is going to be providing you with many different kind of business solutions. Probably the most known ones are the CRM and the ERP. Yes, the customer relationship management and the enterprise resource planning. And probably the ERP is actually the most known one. This is the one that you may have heard about that has all these kind of functional modules, like financial module, controlling module, sales and distributions, human resources. So the idea is that these are the modules that implement the company's business processes. So I actually have to take my hat off to the functionality provided by these SAP systems, because it's like all these modules that represent your business processes are linked together through a platform that is called the NetWeaver platform. So every action, every business process that you take in your company, for example, you make a new request acquisition for a new material for your stock, it's going to automatically affect your comptability and automatically get your balance updated. So everything is really linked and allows you to perform really online operations quite in a strong way. So that from the functionality point of view is really great. We're going to look at the security point of view that has some issues. And also you should know that you'll find SAP running on everything. I think it's only coffee machines left so far, but you'll find SAP running on Solaris, HP UX, IIX, Windows, Linux, running on IA32, IA64, Itanium, x86, all different kind of processor architectures, and with most major databases like DB2, Informix, Oracle, SQL Server, MaxDB, okay? So prepare to find really a wild world of SAP systems out there. Okay, so let's start with the basic concepts, yes, so that we can get an idea for the next demos. The idea is we're going to define what is an SAP system and what is an SAP instance. An instance will be like an entity that is going to be providing one or more services to different users, yes, to different users or different applications. Here you can see that we have, this is the typical SAP landscape where you have a development system where all developments and customization is done. When you're done, any development is taken to the QSA system where new developments are tested, and when they are okay, they are sent to the production system, right? So systems, and please remember this because we're going to use it a lot, systems are identified by what it is called the subsystem ID, or SID. That is a three-character name. So what you can see here, up here in the boxes, is the names of the system. So you have the dev system, QSA system, and PRD system, for example. So what you see, the relationship with an instance, is that a system is going to be a group of one or more instances. So in the development system, you see that there is only one instance. QSA also has only one instance. And the production system, we have one big instance that is called the central instance, and many more smaller instances that are called application servers or dialog servers. Okay? The idea is that this supports for handling many, if you have to increase your user base, you just deploy another dialog server instance and you will be able to balance load and provide more service. What is important for you to know is that a system is going to be running with one database. Okay? So the different instances of the same system is going to be all connecting to the same database, right? So it's the same for you, obviously, if you connect to any of these instances. Okay. This is a bit more complex concept to explain. It's the client concept. Client in SAP, in this case, doesn't mean client service architecture. It can be translated to mandant, right? And it's like a logical independent unit in an SAP system. So, for example, you can have different clients for different company groups. You can have different clients for business units, for some corporations. So the idea is that, for example, the typical example is that you have two factories, okay, from the same organization has two factories, and you want to access the information from the two factories, but you don't want them to access the information from each other. Okay? So for that, one of the choices that you have is to create one SAP system with two clients, right? So take this in quotes, but you shouldn't be able to access information in other clients than in yours. Okay? So actually, when you log into an SAP system, you have to specify which client you will be logging to, right? Okay, so clients are going to be identified by a 3-digit number. Okay, so you have 1,000 clients, 100 possible clients. And by default, this is quite important, everything that is by default is important in SAP world and in general. In every SAP system, you're going to have at least 3 clients, 000, 001, and 066. Okay? They are mainly used for administration and for some kind of remote support, right? So just bear in mind that you will have at least 3 default clients. Okay, so when a user logs in to an SAP system, yes, he specifies, for example, the client, the username, and the password that he needs to log in, he's going to be operating with the system, right? So he maybe needs to make a purchase order, a billing order, or whatever. So he's going to be interacting with the system with a special client that is called SAP GUI, okay? That is like a proprietary SAP client. and it's going to be operating with the system by transactions. So, for example, he will have transactions to create users, he will have transactions to make billing orders, he will run transactions to make, for example, to see employees' information. So transactions are identified by transaction code, even though you can access most transactions through easy menus transaction codes are not really easy to remember, all of them. You also should know that from the authorization point of view, it is quite standard, with some peculiarities, but users are assigned a set of role or profiles, yes, which contain authorization information. So every time you want to make an action, his authorizations are going to be checked against the required actions, and if they apply, they're satisfied, are going to be able to execute that action. So, let's go on with some more basic concepts. ABAP, maybe you have heard about ABAP sometime. ABAP is an SAP proprietary high-level programming language, okay, that is used to develop these business applications. So this business module like financial, human resources, material management modules are developed in ABAP. Okay? Nowadays, you can also develop SAP applications in Java, but most of the really still used ones are written in ABAP. So with ABAP, you're going to be mainly developing two kinds of code. A report or a program, yes, that's going to receive some user input and generate an output, a report. And a function, and you can also develop function modules. Okay? Function modules, you can see them as independent ABAP modules, with the peculiarity that you can call them locally, yes, for example, an ABAP program that needs to perform some library code, or you can also call them remotely, okay, in remote servers. So, in order to call function modules on remote servers, yes, so SAP System A wants to call a function module in SAP System B, it's going to be doing this through the RFC or remote function call interface, okay? That allows you to do exactly like, maybe it sounds quite similar to RPC, okay? It's the same concept. You are able to run some function module on a remote SAP system. Okay, and to end up with this boring basic concept introduction, let's see a little bit of more low-level knowledge. If you have the SAP all profile, you are like the SAP god, okay? You are like an administrator or root or whatever, okay? It allows you to run any transaction and any report and anything that you want to do over the SAP system. So typically, this is one of the goals of a pen test, to get SAP all in the production system, for example. Anyway, beyond SAP all, you will find many other profiles that allow you to become a SAP god too. For example, if you have a profile that allows you to manage users, you will be able to modify yourself and assign you more authorization that you have, so you will be able to become SAP all or whatever. Okay, just that's one example. As I told you before, each SAP system is going to be using one database, all right? Its own database. And SAP processes, the real SAP process at the operating system level that is going, for example, to be running, listening to a server, to a TCP port or whatever, are going to be running under this account in Unix, is the SID ADM. Remember that SID is the system name, so if the name is called PRD, you're going to have a user, operating system user, that is called PRD ADM, right? And in Windows, there is services are run with a different account, that is the sub-service SID, that you know that usually if you deploy another account to run services, because you want it to make it less privileged, so that if it gets exploited, it's not possible to abuse of the system. But anyway, on Windows, sub-service SID is member of the administrator groups, so it's quite, if you exploit one service, you'll get full control of the. Also, you should bear in mind that direct access to a database means full SAP compromise, right? So if you can, for example, get a default Oracle password to get to the database, it's also game over, because there is no, obviously it's a lower layer, there is no any kind of authorization check at the SAP level, so you can just do whatever you want with the SAP information. This is also like pretty funny, pretty 80s. It's like, it's still, SAP still is Unix deployments with SAP are still basing many of their operation in trust relationships, and in error login, error SH, and error exec, believe it or not. So it's actually something that you should also look after. And to make things even worse, it's like many customers are used to use weak interfaces to upload files to SAP or to send files. They, for example, may use FTP with stored password in a text file, really weak. So you can also take a look for that. Okay. Let's see how we're doing. Okay. So actually, why do we need an SAP, or why I think at least that we need an SAP pen test? Usually I get this kind of question by some of our customers some time ago, and I came up with this kind of dialogue that, believe it or not, is something really pretty similar to what I once heard. So here we are seeing, we have the CFO, yes, of the company, the Chief Financial Officer, and the CSO, that is the security guy of the company, right? So the CFO has bought his brand new SAP systems about a year ago, and it's still not running. I mean, there's still time to make it work, because it's really, really difficult to adapt SAP to your company, okay? Because it's really, you have to really port all your business processes to SAP, and it's hard work. So it's like, he's starting to lose power in the company because his little son is not running yet. So he said to the security guy, okay, in a few days I want the SAP system running, no excuses. So the security guy is like, okay, but you know that we haven't looked at the security of the software, we haven't looked at security of the implementation, so probably we should do something about it. Actually, the CFO doesn't care too much on security. Yes, he's far away from that work. He only cares on his power and his little daughter. So he said that, okay, his business must go on. Okay, he's thinking about his holidays, and he said, no, I don't care. Business must go on, so do whatever you need. So the CSO is quite insisting, and he said, we should take care of user authorizations to prevent fraud, because he knows that fraud is something that he understands and he cares. So maybe then he reacts a little bit and he says, okay, let's do the following. Give everyone full access for 3 months, then we'll lock it down. And this is actually something I heard, and it's really common. So the security guy, we actually have much less power than this kind of guys, so we have to say, okay, and the only chance we have is go grumbling back to our small box in the corner of the building, right? So this actually happens, right? But, of course, this will never be locked down after 3 months, right? But, there are also something worse than that. The CFO actually doesn't realize that really weak SAP security configuration is a direct path to business fraud, okay? We're going to see that some of the attacks we're going to see, you can take completely, instantly completely control of an SAP system, and you can do whatever you want with the business information. And there's also something that we are guilty of, and it's that SAP security is much, much more than user roles and authorizations. Okay, usually when you talk with someone with SAP security, and I say, yes, sub-all profiles and segregation of duties, and okay, today the idea is to see that there is much more than only this functional level security. And wrapping up, and to make things a little bit worse also, as I told you before, security is usually seen as a bump in the road for the deployment of an SAP that is quite complex itself. So security configurations are left by default. The problem is that by default, many SAP configurations are not secure, right? So, this is quite basic to deduce, but the conclusion is that actually, this is a fact, there are many SAP systems running out there, major companies that are not secure. So the idea is that a pen test will help you to discover weaknesses, discover how your SAP system can be attacked, and which is the real impact of this, okay? So actually, it will help you secure them. The final objective is not just to hack it, it's to increase the security level. So it will help you to decrease the fraud risks. So in this talk, and we're going to start it right now, we're going to see some of the activities that are involved in making a pen test, okay? So we cannot talk, I cannot show all of them because we will need many, many more hours, but we're going to see some of the activities that you should be looking at when you make an SAP pen test. Okay, so how do you set up your system, yes, if you say, okay, you have been assigned to make an SAP pen test. what do you take with you? Your Nessus stuff or what? I mean, your vulnerability assessment software. Okay, this is some like open source shopping list that you can use. I mean, most of these products you can get like open source versions and free versions. So I'm trying to save you some money. You can get Zapito. You're going to need Zapito, that we're going to see later. You're going to need a port scanner like MMAT or whatever port scanner you like. Air tools like RSH, AirLogin, RxEx. Actually, you need to get them. If they're like an old repository or something, they're still there. You will need SQL client tools. It's quite good to have like this kind of integrated SQL client tool that can connect to many databases, because you're going to find many databases out there. NFS client tools to analyze shared resource in Unix world. The same for the Windows world. You need SMB client tools. You're probably going to need some web application framework assessment tool like Burp or W3EF. You can also use Nessus to discover vulnerabilities at the operating system level and database layer. Actually, it doesn't provide too many features for the SAP layer, okay, but we are fixing that with Zapito. You're going to need Sean, the password cracker, but the patch one that we're going to see later. And you can also have, probably it'd be useful to have like an Hydra or online cracking, online brute forcing tool. So just as a warning, try to get as much information as possible before starting the assessment if it is not completely blind. And remember that if you are making a pen test, they are going to look you with strange faces, and if anything that breaks in the SAP system is going to be for sure your fault. So you have to be ready to deal with that, because it's usually not your fault, but as you are hacking the SAP system, it's like probably it's yours. Okay, Zapito. Zapito is the first public, at least, SAP penetration testing framework. The idea is that it will help you with all the phases on the test. Yes, I didn't want to make just a vulnerability assessment tool. I wanted to make like a real framework that allows you to make some exploitation activities also. It's open source and free. You can download it from our website. It's plugin based. Yes, it's a framework, so you can develop your own plugins and forget about protocols, communications, and session handling. It's all provided by the framework. It's developed mostly in Python, and there is some little code in C to make some interfaces. And it was released here about 2 years ago, version 93. Okay, that was back then. So in December, we have released a new version of Zapito. This is December 2008. It's Zapito 098 public edition. So I was looking at the 093 code, and I realized that I was probably quite drunk when I wrote it. So it's pretty ugly if anyone has ever seen it. So basically what I did was to fully rebuild the core and the architecture. All right? It's not like heaven now, but it's much robust. So now Zapito is based on targets and connectors. Okay? So a target will be an SAP system that you want to assess, and a connector will be all the different means that you have in order to connect to an SAP system. Okay, to an SAP system, you're going to be able to connect through HTTP, through SMTP, through proprietary protocols like RFC, SAP-NI, ALE. So the idea is that Zapito allows you to develop your own way, we're going to be able to incorporate different ways in order to connect to an SAP system. There is a small issue regarding some kind of connectors that are the SAP RFC connectors. RFC is a SAP proprietary protocol. Okay, so in order to develop programs that speak RFC, you need the SAP or the SAP RFC SDK library. So actually, we have developed our own pure Python RFC library that analyzes the protocol and the library, but actually we are not allowed to release that. So you still need to run in this kind of plugins that uses this kind of connectors. You need to get the SDK from SAP. Okay, so you should find a way to get it. If you are an SAP customer, actually you can download it from the Service Marketplace. The SAP portal. Okay, so in this new version of Zapito, we have plugins divided in 3 categories. You have discovery plugins. That the idea is that once you connect to a target, discovery plugins try to find new target. For example, you connect to an SAP system, it's going to try to discover which other SAP systems are connected to it. Okay, so you can expand your attack surface or your assessment surface. Audit plugins will be like making activities in the exploration and the vulnerability assessment phase. Okay? So the idea is that they will help you get some more information from the system and also make some particular vulnerability assessment checks. And exploit plugins are used as proof of concept of the discovered vulnerabilities, but anyway, we're going to see that they are a bit beyond proof of concept. It's like real exploits that can give you quite a lot of privileges. So, in this new version, we have also included Zapito agent-like architecture, like core impact agents and this kind of Meterpreter. Of course, much less powerful than Meterpreter and that stuff. But it allows you to make some quite good assessments and good post-exploitation activities. Okay, and it was also shipped with some new plugins. We have also some more major changes that we replace our sad little frog, because Zapito means something like little frog in Spanish, and we have this new frog. I have also some contributions from my side colleagues, but the marketing guys were not liking it too much, so unfortunately we are still using this one. So the news for today, some of the news are that a new Zapito version is going to be released, 0.99 public edition. The main one interesting news is that you have Windows support, because so far it is only supported on Linux. So now Zapito will have Windows support. And it's also one of the nice features that you are now also able to discover automatically SAP targets and connectors. Okay, so now you can, for example, feed an IP range to Zapito, and it will automatically try to discover all the SAP systems that are running there and configure Zapito for access them. Okay. It is also going to be shipped with some new plugins, mainly to assess sub-routers, if you have ever heard about sub-routers. Unfortunately, we are not going to have so much time to make the demos on the sub-router stuff, but it's really, really critical. And some plugins for the Oracle authentication weaknesses that we're going to see today, and some other stuff. The future of Zapito is that version 1.0 is just around the corner. Probably by the end of this semester, we'll have the stable version. And also, if you have ever run Zapito before, does anyone has ever run Zapito before? 1, 2, yes. I have a great user base of 2 users. But okay, I really thank you guys. So the idea is that if you have ever seen Zapito, you will see that it uses an ugly command line console that probably only I like. So now Zapito GUI is also going to be available in the stable version. If we have time, we're going to make some demos of the Zapito GUI that is under heavy development right now. Okay, so let's start looking at an SAP pen test. Showtime. Let's start with the discovery phase. Okay, the main idea is that you are just plugged into your customer network and you need to make a completely blind SAP test. Okay, so you need to find SAP systems. How do you find them? Mainly, you have 3 options. You can sniff traffic, okay, and look for SAP-related connections. You can do an SAP port scanning, or you can, for example, check client configurations. If you're able to hack into another workstation, you can check, or if you're able to shoulder surf someone, you can check where are the clients connected to. Probably the best choice is to make an SAP port scanning. And this is because SAP uses a wide range of ports, but they are somehow quite pretty fixed. All right? It's not that you're going to find an SAP service listening in a strange port in order to disguise attackers. I mean, it's going to be fixed in some ranges. So in SAP, most TCP/IP ports is going to be using the following format. You're going to have a prefix, okay, plus the system number that the SAP system is using. Okay, system numbers are like just 2 digits. So, for example, some common ports are the 32XX, 33XX, 33XX. So the idea is that if you're running system numbers 00 or 01, that are like the more typicals, you will find port 3200, 3300, 3600, 3900. I mean, all of those ports. I mean, so if you make a port scan and you find like 10 ports that follow this format and are like in these ranges, it's probably an SAP application server, right? So if you want to do this with a regular port scanner, take care about timings. Yes, don't be too aggressive. And also, most important, mind about version detection. Yes, if you're running against new operating systems and new SAP versions, it's actually no problem, but you may find SAP running on really old Solaris 2.6 boxes that maybe you can take it down. Maybe you have some experience on that, as I have. You can take down all operating systems with just an Nmap or an SOScan. So the good news, if you do a scan with Nmap, it won't tell you, it doesn't have a lot of fingerprints for SAP service. Okay, so actually I need to send some of them to Fedor one day when I have some time. But the idea is that you can also do this with Zapito, okay, with this automatic discovery feature that I've been talking to you about. So let's go into make a quick demo of that. Okay, this is, can everybody see that? It's, okay. So, this is Zapito. Actually we're going to run some of the stuff interactively, but you can also feed script files that are really quite faster to run. It's not really used to run it commands interactively, but it's just for you to show. Okay, so you go to a targets menu. There you see which are the connectors that you have available, so which kind of plugins, it will let you know which kind of plugins you can run. Here you go to the discover, there is tab completion and there is help, so you can get an idea of what you can do. And you can add target manually, but, it's not listed, but you can run the discovery command, right? So here what you do, here again, you can do a view and you see all the available options. It's not this ugly, this is because of the font size, but you can see which are the parameters that you can configure. And basically, the important ones are to set to targets, okay? So here you can feed, for example, an IP range like this. You can use this kind of notation, you can put host names, you can use commas, and whatever, right? So in this example, we're going just to test one IP address, that is an SAP system that I'm running on the notebook, on the laptop. It's a Linux operating, in a VMware in a Linux operating system. So I set targets to that, and I have to set the mode. Yes, anyway, this is by default in SAP, but for you to know. Okay, so you can make like a pure SAP port scan that's going to only look for SAP ports, a normal port scan that is going to make SAP plus some administration ports, or a full port scan that will make all TCP ports range scan that is really, really slow, so use Nmap for that. And you also can make use a port range, okay? So you can do something like this, or use any kind of port range. So we're going to make an SAP port scan. We go back here, we have enabled the discovery mode. We go back here, and we start Zapito. So this will start scanning. This is a pure Python port scanner. And it will start scanning that host. So there you see that it has identified all the SAP-related ports. You can see that, this is like a default install. You can see that there are like 1, 2, 3, 4. There are more than 10 ports, okay? So you can be pretty sure that there are SAP ports. And what Zapito does is, if he knows that he has an associated connector with any of these ports, it automatically configures it and adds it for your targets list, right? So now, if you go to the targets menu and you do a show, you see that it automatically has created the targets for you to run the plugins, all right? So now it's, before this feature, you have to add any connector manually, and it was really quite hard work. So now you can just run and scan and discover all the different ways that you can connect to an SAP system, okay? This is the best way to run, to discover SAP systems. So now that we have discovered that where the SAP systems are, let's go into see how we can get some information out of it. Yes, we're going to go to the exploration phase. I told you before that there was a special interface that is called the RFC interface. that is used to call function models on remote systems, right? So what you can do is to call a special function model that is called RFC system info, yes, that in a remote SAP server, and it's going to be telling you all this kind of information without any kind of authentication and remotely, okay, by default, okay? So for this, you can use the SAP info plugin, okay? I'm going to make you just a quick demo. I want to save time for the exploitation phase. But here you go to the root menu, you go to the plugin section. Here you can do a list to see which plugins you have enabled and a list all to list all plugins. Again, it's not this ugly. And we're going to enable the SAP info plugin like this. Okay, so we enable the SAP info plugin. We go back and we start Sapito, and you see that it's running against one of the targets that you have configured, and it lets you know, for example, which is the SAP kernel release, operating system, where is the database, which database you're using, the system ID. Yes, this is the subsystem ID. We're going to use a lot that. So you can call this by default remotely and anonymously, right? So actually, Sapito really relies a lot on this information, and it adds some kind of intelligence for you for further exploits or assessment phases. It takes this information to see what kind of attacks he can do and he cannot do. Okay, in order to protect your SAP system against this, you should try to put your SAP system in a separate DMZ in an internal protected network. But otherwise, you should also configure some parameters that prevents you from being to call this anonymously without any user, okay? So check that SAP note. Then I told you a little bit when we started about the client concept. So in order to know, which clients, one of the things that you should try to realize and to discover is which clients are available, right? Because we know that by default there are 3 of them, but they are going to be, for example, there must be a production client that you don't know which number it is using, okay? So in order to do that, you can use the get clients plugin that is going to tell you, it's going to give you an output like this one. It's going to try to brute force the 1,000 clients or the range that you configure, and it's going to tell you which client is available, okay? So that's just a stupid demo, so I'm going to skip that. But the good news is that you can just really get to know which are the available clients on the remote SAP system, again, anonymously and remotely. Okay, this is also really important, is that you should analyze the shared resources. Any SAP implementation that you're going to see out there is going to be sharing folders, right? Sharing directories. It can be, in Windows it's through SMB, and in Unix world it would be through NFS, right? They have to be, it's really going to be there because all the different systems in the landscape need to share what is called the CTD, or Common Transport Directory, where they put all the new developments new developments are exported to this directory and they are imported to the production and QSA system, okay? So the share is going to be there. The problem is that, for example, you can find this kind of exporting shares in NFS. This is actually a real-life example with some obfuscation. But you can find that they are exporting the transport directory and kernel files and profiles for everyone with write access, so you can destroy the system in a few seconds, right? Or install some kind of backdoor, or do whatever you feel like doing. So that's why you need an NFS client tool and SMB client tools. You should look for this stuff also. Solution is pretty simple. Try to restrict access to shares only to SAP systems and users, right? Don't leave that set to everyone. Okay. So let's go. Once we have made some exploration, and we have already discovered our SAP systems. We have get some information out of them. Let's try to see if they are vulnerable to some kind of vulnerability. Okay. This is probably one of the most commonly found vulnerabilities, believe it or not, is the existence of default users. Okay. The problem is that, almost in all versions, I mean, it's version 640, kernel version 640 backwards that are actually most of them. When you install SAP, it doesn't prompt you for user passwords. Okay, so by default, it will install all these users in these clients with these passwords, right? So you'll find a substar user that is like a super user in these clients, default clients, all right, with this date 06/07/1992. That is apparently the date where they released the R3 version, R3 release. And you may find the substar user. I mean, this is not by default, but you may find the substar user in new clients. I mean, non-default clients with password pass. Yes, we're going to get into that. And you'll find the dedic user with the same password in the same date in a different format. You can find the early watch user that was actually used for remote support from SAP. And you can also find a communication user with password admin. Okay. So the protection against this is, again, secure default users. Substar users should be deactivated. And when I say deactivated, I say, okay, maybe you were thinking, if this is a default user, I mean, a default user and powerful, I only have to delete it and install my own super user. The problem is that if you delete substar user in a client, in default versions up to 640, and usually also you find it in newer versions because bad administration, if you delete a substar user, if there is no substar user in the user master record, you're going to be able to log in with substar and pass. Okay, it's like a backdoor by design stuff. So actually you find it. So this is one of the things that, I mean, you should not delete substar. You should deactivate it. That means to kick out his profiles, lock it down, strong password, and whatever. And you can also use an ABAP report that will show you all this, I mean, the status of the standard users, if they are secured or not. So in the vulnerability assessment phase, what you can do, for example, is to try to brute force users. You have to be really careful because user locking is implemented, actually. So usually it's between 3 or 12 tries before it gets locked. So watch out with locking everyone out of the SAP system. This is important in all passwords that are 640 backwards, that again, most releases right now. Maximum password length, it's 8 characters, yes, and case insensitive. Okay, so you know that the character space is quite, the password space is quite small. A new password, okay, so in newer releases, they have implemented up to 40 character lengths and case sensitive, so it's a bit safer. Anyway, I told you about the user locking, but there is a small oops here that is in version 620 backwards. The lock counter is not incremented by connection through RFC, okay? That is what Sapito is doing. So if you get a kernel that is prior to 620, you can just use Sapito freely, that you can just test for user passwords. So for this, I mean, I get bored of testing each default user in the SAP GUI. It's quite boring, and a monkey can do that. So I developed the Sapito brute login plugin. Okay, so you can use it in different modes. You can just set for default users and substar with pass in non-default clients. You can get specific. You can use a specific credential word list, or you can use just regular user and password word list. Right. So I'm going to make you a quick demo of this plugin. Let's go to the plugins section. We clear all plugins. We go to the audit, config, brute login. We have to configure this plugin. This because I wanted to be a nice guy and to prevent you from being killed in the customer. By default, I mean, if you select the audit all, that you can just run all audit plugins, this won't run because it is an invalid type. So it won't, I mean, maybe you run a plugin all many times, audit all many times, and you end up blocking everyone. So you have to manually set type. We're going to test just for default users. You go back. You select the plugin for execution. You go back, and you start. So first of all, in this version, Sapito first uses the get clients plugin in order to discover which are the non-standard default clients so he can test for the substar and password pass, because it only works on default or non-default clients. So then he starts trying to brute force or try to log in with default users, and you see that you here has some discovered ones, right? So for example, if you get something like this, it means that in client 101, you have a user substar with password pass. So the only thing that you have to do is to create a sub-web connection to your server, 101 substar pass. And that's it. Okay? This is the main sub-web screen. Here you can go to the manage account information, you can create users, you can do whatever you want. You are like the completely owner of the SAP system at this stage. Okay? So you can do whatever you want with the business information. Okay, that's brute forcing. Another thing that you can do, I don't know if I have spoken about this in 2007, so I'm just going to go it quickly. Remote function call, this thing about making calls in remote servers, I told you before, and it is the most widely used interface in SAP systems. Right? You can check. I have written a paper about many vulnerabilities in this protocol. That's exploited in SAP internals. You can get it, and there is a lot of detail there. But it is that in order to connect to a remote system through RFC, you have to provide user client and password, right? Except from the ones that the SAP Info plugin that you don't need to provide authentication, and some other plugins. The thing is that the first thing that you will notice if you sniff for RFC traffic is that it is clear text, right? So here you have like a sample packet. You get the username, BC user, the client, 000, and, well, some other information. But you don't get the password, yes, just by sniffing it. So when I saw this, I started analyzing the protocol, and I came to the conclusion that the password was being obfuscated with a really complex algorithm. So actually, it's a simple SOR operation with a fixed key. That means that now if you use, and it is implemented in the Sapito tool, it's called get password. So now if you get RFC traffic, you will be able to get full credentials to the SAP system. Anyway, I mean, we cannot blame SAP on this because they say actually this is clear text. So it's like obfuscation is for free in this case. Okay, so you have to implement, if you want really to protect yourself against this stuff, you have to implement SNC, that is like an interface to an encryption security product, an external security product. All right? So let's get to the funny part. I guess this is the one more interesting for you. Just a few words before, why do we need exploitation in SAP system? That's actually something that I get asked about. So if you get a vulnerability assessment report, you will find this enumerated discovered vulnerabilities with associated risk estimates. Actually, probably most of you can realize the real impact of a report like this. You know what you can do with this kind of vulnerabilities. But the people from financial areas, that are the people that have bought the SAP system and had the money, unfortunately, we have to admit that we don't have the money and the power. So they really cannot understand a vulnerability assessment report. So actually, it's a good way for them to get involved to show you that you actually can exploit and you actually can, that someone actually, an attacker could exploit this stuff and show them that you can really take control of the system in a simple way. Actually, it also will allow you to test like the security in depth principle. So once you have exploited a system, maybe you are able to connect to other systems. So you are also making like a more in-depth, more deep job. It's not just assessing the front interface. And for managers, it's actually all about risk management. That's the only thing that they really understand. And it's really important that if they don't know which are the involved threats, they cannot do risk management. Okay, so it's our duty to show them which are the involved threats. And last note about exploits in the SAP world is that traditional memory corruption exploits are not really suitable for SAP pentests, okay? Like buffer overflows, integer overflows, and this stuff. Mainly because you will find a lot of operating systems, you'll find a lot of processor architectures, and you have to be really careful with reliability, right? Don't remember that you are testing a critical system that, we have customers that cannot be without SAP running for more than 20 minutes. So I actually won't launch a a buffer overflow exploit against an SAP system. We have developed some buffer overflows and stack overflow exploits, but I mean, it's not really good to release that because it's not really stable in the wild. So most of the Zapito exploits are abusing default functionality, okay, or design errors. So they're a bit safer. Okay. Anyway, you should not forget that you're testing something really critical, and you should know what you're doing every step that you also do in Zapito. Otherwise, you can become something like a dangerous security consultant, something like this. So you have to be really careful what you do, even with Zapito exploits. Okay. Well, this is quite a funny and interesting stuff. It's about some consideration of password cracking and password hashing mechanisms. Suppose that you have got access to SAP system, and you can access, for example, the USR02 table and the USH02 table, where you get the user's password hashes. Okay? SAP has implemented different hashing mechanisms along his history. The most used one is called version B. That is the one that is used in all versions 640 backwards. And I told you before, it's based on MD5, 8-character long, uppercase, and ASCII character set. Sorry. So actually, they found a lot of collisions and vulnerabilities in this algorithm, so they developed version D, which is the same as version B, but it uses UTF-8, so it avoids some of the collisions. But, I mean, it's still based on MD5, only 8 characters long, so it's quite weak. So in new version 7.0 upwards, they developed the code version F. That means that it's based in SHA-1, 40 characters, case insensitive, and UTF-8. Okay? So it's actually a pretty strong hashing mechanism. The problem is that in new versions, you are not using code version F by default. You're using code version C. That is code version F plus code version B. That means that every user, in his user record, he will have password in code version B and password in code version F. So you can guess which one are you going to try to crack. Okay? This is by default, and no one ever changed it. So if the user has a password of 8 characters or less, his B code password, his code version B password, is going to be crackable with in a much faster way. So for that, you can use Sean the Reaper, a patch version that was released on June last year, that will enable you to crack code version B and C, that is actually F, but the guy said that it's C. So another consideration is that the salt for the hashing mechanism in code version B is the username. So you can also do some attacks with that. So protection against this, restrict access to tables, enforce password policies to prevent weak passwords. You can also define weak password in a table. So, I mean, you can do some work on this stuff. And you should disable this backward compatibility and code version B because it's quite easy to crack. Once you have also got some kind of access to the system, you can also try to abuse some sensitive ABAP reports. Okay, so there is a transaction that you can run that is SA38. Sorry. Here you write transaction code, okay? So you run it, and here you can run any report. For example, you can run the report that I told you before, that is to check standard users, okay? So you can run this, and you get like a nice report telling you about standard users. The problem is that anyone who has access to this report can run any report by default, okay? So there are some dangerous reports, like this one, that has something like, I mean, it's like a XP-CMD shell, an SQL server. So you can, I mean, here you can just run whatever you feel like running, okay? So it's actually really critical. So you should be aware of this kind. I mean, anyway, if you have full authorizations in the SAP system at the SAP layer, you won't be going to execute operating system commands probably, because you're probably going to, an attacker is probably going to focus more on getting business information than in owning the operating system. But for those who cannot live without the shell, there you have it. Like me, I had to admit it. So you should restrict access to this transaction, yes, because you can run any programs. And you should use some authorization object that allow you to restrict with programs users are allowed to run or not. All right? So this is quite a funny one that I really like. It came up in one of my trainings in a past conference. How was the SAP application server, I mean, really the process, authenticating against its database? Okay, so not at the functional level, but at the real process level. Okay, how was the process authenticated to the database? So I discovered this bug. I started researching on that, and I discovered this bug in 2007. I was really proud of myself because I couldn't believe my eyes until I realized that someone else has discovered this in 2002. Okay, and it's actually public. If you Google for it, you will find it. But I've spoken to many SAP people, I mean SAP security-aware people, that they don't know about this. And it's really worth seeing it. The target of this attack, of this exploit, is default SAP Oracle installations, okay, that are like more of the half of this implementation in the world. So, how SAP authenticates against Oracle? SAP, the process, will connect to the database as the OPS $seed ADM user. Okay? So, in this case, in the demo we're going to make, our system is called TL1. Okay? So, you're going to be connecting with the OPS $TL1 ADM user. It will connect to the database, and it will retrieve store credentials from a table that is called sub-user. Okay? So, it will get these credentials, and it will reconnect to the database using that credentials. Okay? That these credentials are the actual that provides access to the data, to the SAP scheme. So he has really the privilege to access the SAP tables, right? Is it more or less clear? I mean, it connects, gets some passwords, some credentials, and reconnects. Okay. I'm not asking if it makes sense. It's just clear. It's just it's okay. So what this? Maybe if there are some Oracle guys, they know about OPS and remote OS authent. For those that doesn't. There is a special Oracle configuration parameter that is called remote OS authent. If it is set to true, it means that the Oracle trusts that the remote system has authenticated the user for the SQL connection. Okay? So you can smell that something is not good, actually. It's like clean site validation or something like JavaScript bypassing. So actually, there will be a user called OPS $seed ADM in the database, but it doesn't have a password configured. It's created as identified externally. Okay. So probably the guy that designed this feature was fired from Oracle, and he said, okay, Oracle said, please never put remote OS authent to true, set it to false. It seems that this guy found a job in another company, and he thinks he has really a great idea. So SAP default and necessary, this is important. This is necessary configuration, is that remote OS authent is set to true. Okay? So in order to make this exploit, this attack, you're going to need to know where the database is located and which is the database port, which is the subsystem ID, and which is the Oracle instance ID. Okay? You can get that information, for example, if you have access to the listener. In newer Oracle versions, you don't have access to the listener by default, but more than 90% of the chances, the Oracle instance ID will be the same as the subsystem ID. Okay, so you can take your chances on that. So let's go to make a demo of it. In order to get the information, yes, the required information that I have told you about, we need database host and port. The database host, we can get it with the SAP Info plugin. Okay, it's in this system. Okay, this is running Oracle, otherwise it doesn't make sense. And the subsystem ID, that is probably going to be the same as the Oracle instance ID, is TL1. And by default, Oracle in SAP system use port 1527, not 1521. Okay, so you have all the information you need. So let's try to make an attack out of this. Okay, so what you're going to do is to create just a regular SQL plus connection file. So you specify which host you are connecting to, which port. And in this particular demo that I'm making now, the Oracle instance ID has a different name. Instead of TL1, it's TO1. Okay, but there you should write TL1, that is the subsystem ID. So just a regular SQL plus connection file. So you can see that now I'm user Russo, okay? This is my username in my local system. And I'm going to run SQL Plus and try to connect to that Oracle database. Of course, Oracle database is like, come on, who do you think you are? You are not providing me any logon information. Get the way out of here. So logon denied, all right? So what we do now is to add a local user that it's called seed ADM, okay? So it's actually, in our case, it's TL1 ADM. It's a local system in my system, a local user in my system. So I create the local user, just a regular local user, and I switch to that user. So you can see that I am TL1 ADM on my box, it's called Marley. And I have exactly the same Oracle connection file, okay? Exactly the same as I was trying to use before. So now I'm going to run SQL Plus. That's it. Okay? I mean, as we are pretending to be the SAP application server, because we are running with the same username, Oracle automatically let us connect with that user. So here you see that we are actually connecting with OPS $sign. Okay? The problem is that if we want to, for example, select stuff from the SAP scheme, yes, the user table, we don't have privileges, right? But probably there are some Oracle security guys here that can do some stuff with this kind of privileges, like alter database, create procedure, alter any table system. Okay, so you can get access without any kind of authentication and anything to an Oracle database with a high privilege kind of access. Okay, so let's keep these windows there open. The protection against this, the only solution that you have from the security point of view, is to restrict who can connect to the Oracle listener. Okay, so you should only be allowing connections. This is like Oracle parameters. Yes, in the database, you have to restrict which systems can connect to the listener. So you will restrict this only to SAP systems and not just to anyone on the network. Okay, that you also won't find this in real life. So it's quite I mean, it's more than 95% of chances that I tested it, it's working. So you'll find it also. Okay, I have a few minutes left, so I'm going to try to do this fast. With Zapito, exploit plugins can also deploy or return shells and agents, right? So we're going to use a Zapito exploit plugin that will allow you to exploit weak RFC interfaces, and you get a remote shell. It's quite messy to go into the details of this RFC attack. Anyway, it has been previously described in this paper I told you before, but we are running out of time, so it's difficult. The main idea is that we're going to be connecting with a RFC service that is listening on the SAP system that may be there or maybe not in this case, in this particular case, and will allow us to run operating system commands on the remote system, okay? Without any kind of authentication or whatsoever. So we're going to run that with Zapito. Let me close this. I clear all plugins that I have running right now. And I select the exploit RFC exec plugin. That's how it's called, RFC exec. So you start, and it's not working. Let me see if I have the system. Oh, actually, I have to run it in a different one, sorry. I have to run it. Yep. I close it. Yeah. I'm using the wrong Zapito version. Zapito new. Okay. This is. I'm going to use some scripts to make it faster. I'm just connecting again to our to our SAP application server, and I'm creating the connectors. This is like the new syntax for creating connectors in new version. Anyways, it's explained in the paper. But the idea is that I'm going to run the RFC exec plugin. Let's see if now works. Okay. So basically, what this plugin is doing is checking if this RFC server is available, that he could find it. So he creates a new target of type SAP RFC external. That means it's an external RFC server. So it reruns discovery plugins to see if he can discover new targets. It runs app info to see which operating system and versions it is using. And it runs the exploit plugin. So it's trying to connect, creating new shell created. You go to shells menu, show. You have RFC exec shell with ID 0. So you start 0. There is some warning here depending on the version and that stuff. But it's just like you can run whatever. Again, this is like full control over the remote SAP system and without any kind of authentication or authorization. If you remember before, with this Oracle exploit stuff, we were not able to access the SAP scheme, right? But now we are executing commands on the remote operating system. And you know that in new versions of Oracle, you cannot connect as sysdba from remote, okay? It's just from local access. So to automate this and to make some kind of like privilege escalation virtual attack, I came out with this in the plane, actually, coming here. It's called deploy your agent, yes? So it creates a new Oracle agent, and here you can run SQL and your sys. Okay, so now, for example, let me copy paste so that it's faster. You can, for example, select all. I mean, you can access any information in the database because you are DBA, right? So you kind of do some privilege escalation attacks and get some DBA access in a remote way. Okay. What this Sapito is doing is writing a file to the remote file system with RFC exec with the command that you want to run and read it with SQL Plus and send you the output back. Actually. But well, it's kind of useful. Okay. To protect against this, you have to use some security settings that you can also find in my last paper. You should also check some notes, but basically you need to protect against someone starting and connecting to this RFC exec server program, right? So there are ways to protect against this. By default, they are not implemented, so anyone can do this kind of stuff. So you should implement them yourself. And finally, the last exploits stuff is how to expand influence, okay? So let's suppose that you have got access to one SAP system, that usually it's easier to go to the development system, and you want to try to jump to other systems, right? Usually SAP application servers will be running interfaces with other systems, okay? They can be RFC interface, HTTP interface, or any kind of SAP-supported protocol to make interfaces. These destinations are stored in a transaction or in a table. It's called RFC-DES, and managed through transaction SM59, okay? So in order from an SAP system to connect to a remote SAP system, he's also going to need probably to send login information from the remote for the remote user, okay? So from our experience, you'll find that many of these connections has stored credentials. So it means that anyone who calls the interface, any ABAP program that uses as interface, is going to be used the user and password defined in the connection. And also it's really important that usually users and passwords stored here for interfaces have wide privileges over the remote system, okay, like SAP-all. So if you are able to abuse this kind of stuff, you will be able to completely own the remote system. So this is how you do this. I mean, you have got into an SAP system, so the first thing that you can do is go to transaction SM59, and you will start analyzing these kind of connections. These are all connections to other systems or other programs. The most important or interesting one for us is the ABAP connections, yes, that are connections to other SAP systems. And for example, here you'll find that there is one called prod eFace, that is a customer interface to a production system. So you go into that. Here you see which target host is connecting to. Actually, in this example, it's the same host, but there will be like production system. And if you happen to find something like this in login security tab, you happen to find something like this, like saved, it means that anyone who uses this destination is going to log on to a remote system, to this client, with this username, and with the saved password. So, okay, any ABAP code, any program function module can use the destination, but you can also use that. And there is a little button here, remote logon. That's it. This is a new SAP GUI window, you see? And you are in the remote system. And here you see that you are logged in as admin in that client. Okay? So it's probably the easiest way to jump around in SAP systems. Okay? And you'll really find it out there. So it's quite a good way to expand influence to other systems. Okay. In order to protect against this, you should block access to this transaction, block access to RFC table, avoid using stored credentials, and many other stuff that you can check in the white paper. Some conclusions. Oh, before conclusions, just a second. That is something that we have been working on, so I'd like you to see it. It's just a quick demo with Sapito GUI. Okay, we are just working right now on this, so it's not really finished. But actually, you will be able to set up policies for the scan. You have all the plugins here, the audit discovery plugins that you can configure in a much more easy way. Okay. For example, let's going to make a quick run. I'm going to make just the same RFC exploit. 3.4. This is our SAP. No, sorry. Well, it's okay. The same. Here, for example, you can see that you can discover connectors quite in an easy way. You run an SAP discovery, and it's going to again do the same that we were doing before, and automatically adds the connectors. It's going to take a little bit. Okay, here you see that it automatically has created connectors, and there is something that's quite neat. Is for example, I'm going to use this RFC exploit. I have to create a special target for this. So far, it is actually automatic as we have done with the console, but it's not ready in the GUI. So you go to the exploit plugins, and you drag and drop to the connector, and you are running commands here. Okay, so just for you to know that the ugly console is going to be left behind if you don't want to use it. So this is, and you're going to get results and everything really nice for you to use. Okay. Conclusions before we end up. Really fast. We cannot make everything in a 1 hour talk. There's a lot more to speak about SAP pen tests. SAP systems, remember that they're really critical. They run real sensitive business information and processes, so security is critical. As I told you before, SAP implementation is really hard from the functional point of view because it's really, you have to put all your business process into it, so security is often overlooked. And the problem is that by default, there are many configurations that will render your system exposed to high-risk threats. Remember that this is important for us as security guys. Security is much more important. It's much more than user and role authorizations. All the attacks that we have shown will also take place even though you have perfect segregation of duties and really need SOX compliance. So take a look at that. SAP actually provides many ways to secure these systems. The problem is that usually administrators also don't implement that. And actually, SAP security is getting better. Okay, each new release has a better and more safe, secure default configuration. But the problem is that still many customers use old versions. The last one is you should pen test your SAP system. Yes, it will allow you to get a real knowledge of the current and effective level of security level. If you are a chief security officer, it can also help you get some more budget for your area to show that actually your SAP system was not really that secure in your company. And if you are a CFO, you cannot say that we didn't warn you about this. Well, you should get the right people. You can use Sapito, just download it from the website. I hope the next time I got more than 2 user base. And if you are actually taking pentest, SAP Pentest seriously, you should ask me about SAP Advanced Edition. That will also be released in this semester, and it's going to be like a professional feed with newest plugins and like more features for the professional work with pentest. Stay tuned because there's quite new stuff coming through. Any questions? I think actually, well, just one question, and we are done because they are going to kill me otherwise. Yes. No, for the SAP we use a different protocol that is called DIAG. That it's actually not encrypted; it's compressed, and I'm actually also working on that and making a sniffer out of it. So yeah, stay tuned. Actually, well, no. Well, you can meet me just because they are going to throw me something at me. So I'm going to get a headshot. Okay, thank you very much.